Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Find a Way Productions with your co-host, Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What's up, coaches? This is the Coaching 101 podcast. I am Daniel Chamberlain. That is Kenny Simpson. We're joined today by coaches. Are you in Alabama now? Is that?
I am 23 miles from the river. I am in Georgia.
You're in Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay. I always get confused. So we're joined by Georgia coach, Alabama coach,
Yes,
and all over coach, Chip Seagle. Chip, how are you today?
I'm golden, Chambo. It's good to be with y'all again. It's been about a year since the last time, and I'm tickled to be here. Kenny and I just talked. I had him on mine. I think you came out this past Sunday morning on mine. So long time no see, Kenny.
That's right. Good to see you again.
Yeah, you too,
Podcast
buddy.
world, that network, man. It's not real big, and we all just go on each other's shows. It's fun though, isn't it?
It's fun. I enjoyed I'm going to have you on once a year, Daniel. What it's going to do, and then I'm going to go back in 10 years and put them all together and say, look at the evolution of a young coach.
That's right. I'm pretty excited about. We got Boston coming up in April, and once I think once we get that, and then I do it the week later in Milwaukee, and then I'll have like a good online clinic. You know what I mean? Like something I can go in and just knock out. So I'm pretty pumped about that. So I'll jump on in April or whatever as we if you got an opening then.
Absolutely.
Speaking of the show, I just want to give a big thank you to all of our listeners right now. We grew 1,000 listeners in the last 21 days.
Wow.
So we've been averaging about 5,500 viewers or downloads a month for a couple months, 3-4 almost. And then we broke 6,500, like 6,800 yesterday. So appreciate you guys. Obviously, we've had some, really good guests on. Chip going to be one as well. I think this will do a lot of really big numbers. But we appreciate you guys who keep coming back and listen to us talk ball. I get a lot of feedback about the show and just listening to coaches speak good things out there into the ether, if you will. So,
hey, I'm one of those 6,800, man.
There you go. Well, we appreciate it. Appreciate you.
I listened on my run yesterday.
That's awesome. How's clinic season going, Kenny?
Man, it's good. By the time this comes out, I'll have got to see Chip, in Alabama, and we got real good numbers at that clinic, and then Ohio. So those will have just passed. By the time this one comes out, then we'll have the Pacific Northwest, going up there near Portland and Seattle kind of area. And then, of course, see you in the last two we do in April, Boston and Milwaukee. But a lot of fun. I just got done doing the San Antonio clinic, and so it was warm down there, and then I came home, it was not so warm, but a lot of good clinic. I got to hear a dude that's won 2 state titles talk Texas slot tee. So it was a gun tee, and then he gave 2 sessions on the slot tee. Each time we do the clinic, I always try to bring in some kind of local speaker. The one Chip's coming to, we're bringing in North Alabama coach Coach Cruz. Well, I know him from his time coaching high school in Arkansas. And then, of course, we've got other speakers at our other sites. So been cool. By the time these are done, I'll have had a chance to clinic with over 1,000 guys across the country, and that's always really cool.
Yeah, that's a great way. I just talked about that network being kind of small. It's a small circle, but getting those connected with those guys, that's big time, man. You never know when you need those networks either. Whether it's hiring a new coach or sending a player to college. Like, there's so many good reasons to just build up a clinic and go do it. So, well, congrats on the success this year.
Yeah, man, I want to mention this. So if you're listening, we've had every state so far attend the clinic minus Hawaii, because a guy came from Alaska to the national clinic. So we got one of those faraway states. We had both the Dakotas and all the other states. So if you're in Hawaii, you guys are disappointing me. Everybody else is showing up for a clinic. So either you need to host me down there, or I can take my wife and do a clinic. One of y'all has got to come over here.
There we go.
The smart
if
thing,
the Hawaii
the smart
one,
thing.
We're gonna have to make it a whole team effort. Like,
Okay, Chip's in on it too, I figure.
Hey, brother, if it's tropical, I'm down with it now. I'm telling you.
You have to fight out the gun and shoot over there, or the run and shoot, or whatever they call it. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you can figure out the gun tee and shoot, you're all right. Maybe they'll let you in.
They do like chunking the ball over there on the island.
Oh, they do. Yeah. I don't know if my brand is going to fit that brand, but I've got some guys that are running the gun tee over there.
Gun tee and shoot, man. I think that's the next step, Coach. All right, guys, let's jump into our topic here. We are going to be talking some O-line play, dividing your front and back side, and really just kind of some rules-based stuff. So, Coach Simpson, before we do, if you don't mind, tell us how we can simplify football for our staff and for our players. What's up, coaches? I want to talk to you for just a few moments about your program. You know, the longer I'm in this profession, the more I understand that efficiency is truly the name of the game. We're talking offense, defense, doesn't matter, right? Eventually, you're going to come down to checking out your efficiency. So I have to ask you, are you doing everything in your program the most efficient way, right? Are you fundraising the most efficient way? Are you representing your players and your program to the public in the best way? Are you planning to build the facilities the most efficient way? If you answered no to any of those, or really even if you answered yes to all of them, and you haven't contacted Mark Bridges at Ace Sports, you're missing a key step. So look, Mark and his team, you know, they are the go-to group for video board and scoreboard installations for your school. They're not just football either. Mark can help you mock up your newest video board for that new stadium, or maybe even your old stadium, right? That's where Mark and the guys come in. And we're not just buying a flashy thing, right? Yes, it's nice. It's pretty neat to have that big scoreboard, that big video board, but you're also, you know, you're investing back into that program. You're investing into that newest fundraiser. Sure, you can keep selling your discount cards, your beef jerky, hosting pie auctions, whatever it is that you like to do. But let's just be honest with ourselves, guys. We're not making enough money for those big ticket items. For the big ticket items like turf, an indoor facility, that's where you need a big ticket item fundraiser. That's what Ace Sports is offering you today. Guys, I've talked to Mark several times now, right? And it always comes down to big school, small school. Right? Well, of course, the big schools can afford that new video board, but the small schools really can't. It's just not true anymore, man. Your school isn't too small, and I promise. Okay, 1A, 2A schools, it doesn't matter. Mark and the guys, they're helping them out. Contact Mark today at mark.bridges@acesports.com and let him come give you a quote. Let him show you and your administration the plan. Now, really, it's the cheat code, right? Let him show you the cheat code that is fundraising with Ace Sports video boards. Tell him Daniel sent you. This episode is brought to you by Athletic Speed and Movement. At athleticspeedmovement.com, we've taken Del Basquet's 45 years of speed and movement training and put it all in one place just for you. You can get the same training that NFL players have been getting for years, collegiate players have been getting for years, and now high schools across the nation are paying thousands of dollars to bring Del in to install his system, but we've got it online for you. It's time to help your team become faster, not just in the 40, not just their sprint speed, but between the tackles and their cuts while they're chasing down the quarterback. It's time for you to help them become faster everywhere. Jump over to athleticspeedmovement.com. There's an orange button there. Just click it. It says, get the keys to playing faster. You'll get the 3 core movement video from Dell. He's explaining the science behind it, all for just the price of your email. Check it out, athleticspeedmovement.com.
Coaching 101 podcast is sponsored by Findaway Productions. Findaway Productions also sponsors fbcoachsimpson.com for all your coaching needs, with over 30 coaching materials, books, as well as 50 PowerPoints and videos and smaller materials, and the free magazine headsets. Findaway Productions also sponsors offensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things offense, and defensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things defense.
Appreciate that, Coach. We talked about a little bit a minute ago as we kind of did the opener and just those clinics. We've got, as the time this releases, the last 3, right? So if you're in the Pacific Northwest, you're in the Northeast, or the North Central, I guess, you've got a place to go. Wise on you to plan those out after it tries to warm up a little bit. So kudos to you. Although seeing the snow in Boston, that's, you know, it's kind of on my list. So maybe it'll just hang out until April. We'll see. New book out, Play Callers Guide. Tell me about it, Coach.
Yeah, it's been really cool. You know, we've the first 200 we kind of gave a free PowerPoint, some stuff too, just to kind of kick it off. But those sold out pretty quick, and so we've still got. My wife has ordered a whole another batch of them. So Play Callers Guidebook, basically, it's not gun tee specific. It's for any offense, and so it walks you through how to build your offense, how to call plays in a game, how to make adjustments. I think it would apply to any coach that wants to learn offensive football. And if you've read my books before, you know, there's not a lot of fluff. I mean, we kind of get in it and get down to it and try to give real life scenarios, and but it's been really, really cool to see it sell in different places. We can kind of see who buys it and where it goes. And so far, it's gone all over the world. It's sold in every continent, so it's been pretty cool.
Cool.
Yeah, the book thing is still so cool. Just coaches helping coaches, because I guess you kind of get to that. Like, there's nothing new under the sun, but it's just the way that you write it and the way that you make it fit your philosophy. So, having that gun team mentality, I guess, really, and then that just problem solving as you go. I love it.
I've got the quote of the week. This one's coming from the next team theme, so that's not out yet, guys, but it will be out before the season. If you don't know how those work, basically, we do our team themes off of how we do it with our own team. Like, I'm not going to put something out there that we don't do. We're doing, so Team Themes 5 will be coming out probably sometime, I would bet, in June, because it takes me a while to write these. But the quote of the week on this one, I think it came from one of our themes this year is going to be focus. So that's going to be one of our words of the week. And so the quote of the week is Albert Einstein. I thought that'd be nice. Chip might enjoy that one. So Albert Einstein says, "I'm not that smart. It's just that I stay with problems longer." I think a lot of times with us, it's the ability to focus for a prolonged period of time. That's an art, and that's tough to learn how to do. And especially with, as you coach football and deal with teenagers, it gets tougher and tougher because those phones don't make it any easier. So the ability to get guys to focus in and dial in and not give up when it's easy. That's going to be one of our themes coming up. So it'll be in Team Themes Volume 5, 1 through 4 is over at the website.
Talking websites, we got the Headsets magazine, and I know that if you haven't already, you can jump over to fbcoachsimpson.com/headset, and that'll get you to the magazine. There's years of publications there. Chip and I both happen to be writers for the magazine, so it's kind of cool getting to talk about it when you've got a lot of writers in the building. Chip, did you write last month too? Did you have a January edition?
I did, and don't ask me what it was on, because I write so many. I have to send an outline of them to Jamie and said, "Have I done this one before?"
Oh, there we go. You're a man that's got two. I know what I wrote about, because I'm still sweating it. It's like college, do tomorrow kind of stuff going on over here. So I remember every one of them.
Chip's been smart, man. He doubles up. And so kind of like I was doing with him when I was writing articles, he was writing articles. It was kind of helping him get ready to write his books. He's got several books out, and that's a really good way to kind of get into that world. So he's got, I think, Chip, you got at least 3 or 4 books out now. Is that right?
4. I got 4 out. The most recent one, it's been going like gangbusters. The Gun Power Spread System Manual, which is everything we did, and I even tell it's kind of like it is a manual, football manual for coaches. It's a playbook. It's got videos, but it's also at times it's almost like a memoir. And there's another frou-frou word for you, Daniel, that I use sometimes. And where I go back 20 years and say, here's what we were thinking when we started this. And I talk about the failure, what a miserable failure my first venture into it. I was a wing tee guy in the 90s and the early 2000s. And then we tried to, marry in those spreads things, and got the whole offensive staff fired. And so and I said, I'll never do that crap again. And then about 4 or 5 years later, I find myself at a school, and we're very successful running under center wing tee. And then all of a sudden, the kids that come through aren't those kind of kids. And I said, well, I've got this idea. But by then, other people had started doing things. And I'm kind of like Einstein. I'm not that smart, but it's not that I stick with it longer than others. I just steal from people that are smarter than me. And I started stealing a lot of ideas and marrying them together. And Kenny and I talked about it on my podcast. And that's what's in this thing. It talks about the mindset and how we came about doing this and what caused us to do it this way, because that's what I want to know. I want to know why coaches do what they do. Like when I'm breaking down film, when I was still, actively day-to-day coaching, I would aggravate the other guys on the staff. And I said, I wonder why he does it. And they said, what does it matter? And I said, because if you know his motivation, you may get an idea on how to stop it or how to, to answer it. And I've always tried to find out what motivates people. Like, A friend of mine said, when a kid messes up, why do you ask him why? I said, so I can figure out how to fix it, you
Right.
know? And that's what, and that's in the manual, and it's going to be a perpetual. I'm going to update it. Everybody that purchases it will get the updates. And I've already got two things I'm going to add to it probably in April, March or April, and they'll just get the updates, and it will be perpetual. And then the jet manual, which is all things jet, the OL manual for gap down backer gets into great detail. That's the one I'm making into a hardback that Kenny and I've talked about. And then the big book of bucks, the vanity project. I just love buck sweep. And so I just went into all the different ways you can run it, all the different things you can do, and how we started blocking it to answer people. These dastardly defensive coordinators are always trying to do bad things to us, and how we came up with it. And people that listen to my podcast and watch my YouTubes know when I say that I'm joking. I don't know. There's probably people out there that have never heard me before. I'm joking. They're not dastardly. Some of my best friends are defensive coordinators.
I love it. Well, hopefully all you OCs out there have spent time on the other side of the ball too, right? So we all have a little DC in us.
Yeah.
Sweet. Last thing we'll mention here is just the Patreon, patreon.com/Chamberlain Football Consulting. Jump over there. I have had an onslaught of free members that, guys, there's not much there for you if you're jumping in as a free member. I might say hi from time to time, but if you jump in, find one of the tiers that fits what you need for your staff or your team, you as a coach, a player, whatever it is, then you can figure out which tier it is and jump in on there. Guys, let's get into talk here. Question one here is just, we're going to talk, kind of front side gap scheme, O-line blocking. And the first question I think has to be, you've mentioned a couple times, Chip, and Kenny, you as well, gap down backer. So what is gap down backer? Kenny, we'll start with you and then we'll pass it off to Chip and see what he can fill in any blanks.
Sure. You're kind of in my world here and Chip's world too, right up the wheelhouse here. But, and we've started actually, I think we've kind of started moving away from using the term gap down backer with our kids. We're using the blocking scheme. So when we say gap down backer, it simply means we're blocking the first thing inside. If there's nobody inside of you, you're going to work the linebacker. And that seemed to make a little more sense to our kids. What they've got to understand, the down part of that is the hard part, because down means there's a guy directly in front of me, like in front of my buddy. That means I'm blocking down on him. They've got to know that if a guy's directly in front of me, I don't have him. And so that's kind of that's the issue you'll face if you decide to go with this scheme, is I've got a guy who's kind of head up me. We got to communicate this out. So we've just found it easier to say, I'm blocking the first thing inside. If there's nothing inside, I work the second level. And then we highly encourage our kids to try to communicate this out. But the gap down backer is the wing tee mantra. That's kind of something you'll see a lot of guys, where if you get into other things, you'll hear gap down double. And so there's other ways you can kind of modify this to fit it. But I think the whole essence of what we're talking about today is rules-based blocking. So gap down backer, that's obviously my world. If you're going to run buck sweep, that's kind of that world. But there are other gap down things you can work with, gap down double. We've had our guys before, they're gap down and they don't go to linebacker because they're just not athletically good enough to block that guy. So they're just gap all the way down. Basically, I'm blocking whatever first thing that shows is, and however that needs to look. So that's how we would say it. I'm sure Chip's been doing it a little longer. He might have different ways they do it.
What you got for us, Chip?
I like what Kenny said, and it harkened me back to several years ago. We had a great big old tackle that, and his rule was always just gap down, and especially it worked well on the buck because I just told him to block the first lineman inside of him. That's what he did, because putting him on a linebacker was like peeing up a rope. It wasn't going to go very far, and so we just didn't do it. But to me, gap down backer, it's the base blocking rule for the front side of power, counter, buck, and whatever else gap scheme there is. But it always involves a kick out coming from the backside and almost always a wrap coming from the backside. But to me, gap down backer is you look in your gap, and your gap is always inside of you. If there's something in it, you got it. And I teach the kids that it's a progressive rule, progression, that you go through it. And I tell them, when you look at it, it's gap dash, down dash, backer dash. And I say, when you see a Those dashes, that means it's a progression. So you look inside, the first word in gap down backer is gap. If something's in your gap, you're through. That's who you block. You don't go down, you don't go backer. That's who you block. If you look in your gap and there's nothing there, then you look down. What is down? Down is the guy inside of you covered. If he's covered, boom, you're done. You block down. That's the guy you block. And then backer, of course, means if nothing's in your gap and nothing's down, you get on your track, and that's all in the O-line manual. The tracks, and excuse me, we had a railroad track. It ran near our field, and I would tell the kids, I said, "You see that train over there?" I said, "Why aren't we running from it?" They said, "Because it's on its track." And I said, "Exactly." I said, "You block whatever's on your track, just like that train is going to block whatever's on it, going to knock out whatever's on its tracks." And so gap down backer, you get on your track if you got backer, and it takes you to the backer. And it's usually the backside backer, or unless they're running a 3-3 or a 4-3, the Mike backer. Very seldom will you get the play side backer unless he crosses your track. And that's all in the manual as well. But there's so much to it. The reason I love it so much is that it's so simple that the kids don't have to think as much post snap. And because so many schools I worked at in my 40 years in it, we had the O-line go both ways. When I didn't, I would do other things. When I had a dedicated group of O-linemen and I could get them for a long time and not just 20 minutes of ID, because anybody that I've ever worked with will tell you, if you ever ask me, is that enough ID time for the line? The answer is always no. If you gave me 2 hours, I would say no, because I'm afraid you'd take time away from me if I said yes. But working combination blocks are great. And matter of fact, just 3 years ago, I was at a small school, but we had 15 linemen, and they were all good size. I've never been anywhere in my life, even at the 6As I coached that had that many big linemen. And the head coach said, it was a young guy. He asked me to come help him. It was just up the road from the house. It was after I retired from Alabama the first time. And he gave me those. I had 9 kids that all they did was play offense. And in 1 day a week, they'd do ID time with the defense so they could be emergency subs on Friday night. But I'd have those kids for 30 minutes of ID time and then like 20 minutes or 15 minutes of inside run. And we used the double team. The rule was gap on down. Gap, you block it. If something's on you, you block it, and then you'd get the help from the guy outside of you if you had somebody on you. And that was just a way of getting that combo block. And we worked it, and we ran inside zone because we had time to work the combination blocks.
Yeah.
That's where that was in 21. And that's, Daniel, the last time we talked where I got into duo.
Yeah.
Because we were so big. Yeah.
Yeah. Duo, I think, is a great variation of this that Kenny, you talked about the gap down double, right? I mean, that's the rules that I use for duo, but we just use it down the whole line. You don't have to segment front and backside then.
I use
but it
gap
is
down,
nice
buddy.
when your traditional gap scheme rules can just transpose straight into what essentially is a gap scheme version of a zone, right? You're just getting all those combos. So that works really well. I kind of we're talking about rules based here. So what are the advantages of using this rules based blocking? Kenny, we'll let you go first here.
To me, I think that's the only way to do it, regardless of if you're zone, if you're gap, if you're whatever. If you don't have rules, you're in trouble. That's where you get into, especially if you're listening to this and you're a younger coach and you haven't got into this. I mean, anything you do offensively or defensively has got to be fundamentally sound, which means it's got to work against anything you might see, because every coach, even if you've coached for 100 years, you're going to see something different. And if your rule does not cover that, you don't have a good rule. So that's what you've got to think about when you're putting in a run or pass or whatever you're putting in is, what if this, what if that, what if this? We call that kind of the if-then mindset. Well, that's how you answer a lot of those things is you have rules. And so for us, you need to understand that you're going to see multiple looks. Defenses they're going to stem, they're going to move. And if you don't have some kind of rule-based deal, you're going to struggle. As I was a younger coach, especially guys that didn't play offensive line or don't really understand offensive line, we try to break down an opponent, predict what they're going to line up in, and then we only work that front because that's what we think we're going to get.
Right.
And so I have you have him, and then all of a sudden they don't line up in that. So as I've evolved as a coach and gotten better as a coach, and most good offensive line coaches that way, we don't really worry about alignment much anymore during practice. We worry about making sure that our rules are followed. And so the big ways you can do that a lot of times is working with people on asking them questions. Who do you have? And they ask you, who do I have? You say, what's your rule? What's your rule? What's your rule? So they learn this. But it's also a lot cleaner. I think it makes things a whole lot cleaner if you know kind of what you're doing and who you're blocking. And there's lots of different ways you can do this. So we just talked about gap down backer, kind of brought up gap down double. Our belly play or a couple other plays we run, they're number based. We basically are blocking 1, 2, 3 wherever they might go. That's a really good way to run ISO type plays or insert type plays is if you teach them I've got 1, 2, or 3, then you can that run may hit A gap, B gap, C gap. It may hit whatever gap based on the front of the defense. But again, it's still a rules based. Like I have 1, he has 2, he has 3. And so it's whatever it is, it's rule based. So there's lots of different ways you can slice the pie. But the idea is you need to have a rule that would handle any front you might see. Because if you get to a spot where you go, well, if we get this front, this play won't work, then you don't have a good rule. You need to kind of figure out your rules.
Yep.
That's great points. Chip, what can you add to that, boss?
I love it because you can use it with undersized linemen. I'm a firm believer when you play what gets off that yellow cheese wagon in the morning or whatever mama drops off at the front door of the schoolhouse. And gap down backer allows you to use a 185-pound lineman against a 250-pound defensive lineman because you're using angles. And I'm real big on using what God gives you. If God gives you a voice, you ought to sing. If God gives you an angle, by God, you ought to take it. And so we're looking for angles, and that's why I loved it so much because, like I said, that 185-pound guy can deflect that guy. I go back with UFC to when they were single digits, UFC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the cat from Brazil, Royce Gracie, I saw him beat up 300-pound sumo wrestlers and make them tap out. Why? Because he used angles. He used leverage. This guy never weighed more than 180 pounds. And he was the greatest UFC fighter till eventually the sport just outgrew him and the other fighters outgrew him. But he was unbelievable because he used leverage. And that's what gap down backer does. You use leverage. And it allows you to be successful with smaller kids. The offensive line doesn't have to knock people off the ball and gap down backer. Sometimes a stalemate will work because you know where you're running the ball. If you can just get in that guy's way and get a little bit of horizontal movement, duo is all about vertical movement, but gap down backer is about horizontal movement, moving them flat and just using body position. And if you can just get in between that 3 tech and establish the wall there and work your hips upfield, you can now run that gap outside that 3 tech. Because I don't know physics, but I know a solid can't go through a solid. So usually the offense wins by getting in the way and getting a little horizontal movement. And if the big guy's charging, you're using his momentum against him. And you may give up a little penetration. And that I've heard defensive coordinators say, oh, to beat a wing T team or any gap team, all you got to do is get penetration. Well, the dirty little secret from most wing T O-line guys is this. Oh, yeah, we hate penetration. Not true. It's like Brewer Rabbit. Please don't throw me in that briar patch. We can't get too much penetration, and you can't get it inside the point of attack, or it messes up your pullers. But we don't mind penetration if you're penetrating where we're not running. And that's going to happen too. And I've modified the way we pull to the skip pull to get depth, because there was one year we went to the quarterfinals with a 145-pound center. And he kept getting knocked back, but he was game and he stayed in there and fought. So I taught those guards, I said, kick back. A guy taught me skip pull and kick back and get great depth. to get away from it. I said, if you get hung up on the center and whoever he's blocking, that's your fault.
Right.
You got to get depth and get around his butt. And then a few years ago, I was studying Ferris State, and I heard their old line coach say this. So we get depth. We use skip pull. And I said, bingo. It wasn't one of those things where you go like, oh, yeah, we do the same thing. It was just confirmation. Oh, good. I saw a problem, and that was my answer. They saw a problem. That was their answer.
Yeah.
And like you said a while ago when you quoted King Solomon, Daniel, there's nothing new under the sun. There's people all over the country doing identical things that have never met each other. So, because we're all looking for answers.
I think the rules-based blocking, it just, once again, simplifying things for your kids. It lets you, Kenny, you already mentioned it, you get to have answers for whatever shows up. I helped a coach for a youth team this year, consulted with him, and Kenny, he was running your gun tee. And he's trying to run buck, but they would have 3 guys in the A gap. You know what I mean? Like they would have strong side A guy head up, and weak side A. And he was like, what do I do? And I'm like, well, that's your rules take care of it, right? Just move bodies. Obviously with buck, you can't pull the front side guard if there's 3 humans coming through that gap. But I think it quickly allows you to answer those questions, and you don't have to go out and problem solve every single little problem, right? You just give them a base set and kind of let them run. And then, just like in zone, we kind of let the kids have fun with it and create their own mechanics and their own communication. I think you can do the same thing in gap scheme. If there's a problem, if you need somebody, if the guard can't pull, but he can pass it to the tackle, sure, why not? Look, I'll take this down and we'll just pass it off, right? Let them create their own mechanics to kind of make these rules stay true and get your intent carried out, whatever that is. So with buck, I still need a pull kick guy. It might just be the tackle instead of the guard or the center. We get into this pin pull type stuff, right? So I think that's why we need rules-based blocking, is to let them understand what our intent is and then let them kind of problem solve outside of that.
Well, let the kids sometimes, once they learn the concept, they can determine who blocks, who pulls, is what you're talking about. And just so you know, here's proof that I listen to every episode. I know you're really big right now into tags, Daniel.
Yeah, for sure.
And that like what you just said, if you're running power and they're in a bear front, which by the way, I hate that term bear front because we were using that front in the 1970s when I was in high school. But anyway, we called it Abbeville because the defensive coordinator learned it from a guy at Abbeville High School down in South Alabama. But if you get 2 3s and a 0, just have your backside guard and tackle, just do a swap. And if that 3 technique on the backside, there's no way that tackle can dig him out. Just let the guard fan block him and let the tackle pull and wrap. Yeah. There's an answer for everything. And I don't understand the obsession that coaches right now are having with what they call these tight fronts and mid fronts and whatever the crap they call it. And they think they're doing something by putting put a guy in each B gap and having a 0. A gap down backer takes care of that. I mean, it comes down to somebody's got to win a fight, but it's not like that scheme is just like the end all be all, or that's all you'd see on Sundays. That's all you'd see. And there's an answer for it. And that's why we got to, what Kenny and I talk about all the time, that's why you got to have a system. And that's why I like gap down backer. It's a system because you got the if-thens, you got answers. Say, okay, if they're doing that, then this is what we'll do. And now all you've done is taken 3 guys and sacrificed their butts inside because we're running outside of those 3 guys.
Right. And Chip, that's a great segue into our last part here and just talking about problem solving, especially, obviously most of the problem solving here is when defensive fronts change. Because that's what's going to, a random walk down backer, I guess, could be the same thing. But that's just changing the front, right? If he walks down, great. Now instead of a 3, they're in a 4 front. Instead of a 4, they're in a 5. So, Kenny, we'll come back to you here. Like, how are we problem solving this on Friday night? You talked about you're going to get kind of a crapshoot of fronts, especially when you start running RPOs and these guys all want to lock you down in man and go crazy. So what are you doing to problem solve on Friday nights?
I think there's a couple things you can do to help. I mean, one is, obviously you've got to do a little bit of research of the technique you're getting played with. And I think that's probably one of the most underdone thing that coaches do is they scheme how the defense is playing them, not where they're lined up. Like I can get up and draw on a board. Anybody can draw on a board. My 12-year-old can draw up how they're lined up. how are they playing you? And Chip kind of mentioned that, like problem solving. Are they trying to use movement and stunts and speed, or are they kind of anchoring down and trying to two gap you or play a gap? And I think that's going to dictate a lot of the issues you may face, whatever scheme you're running, because I think it should affect how you block them. If they're trying to get upfield, he mentioned it. Like if you're wing T, you kind of want teams to penetrate a little bit as long as you can handle it. If they're not doing that, I think there's a different way that we kind of go about down blocking people, different angles you're going to take if they're not trying to come upfield. So, one, I think you need to scheme how the linebackers fitting. Are they, like Daniel, you said, are they blitzing, walking up, or are they scraping? Is everything just scraping? So, I think you got to do that kind of research first, because that's not going to change in a game. A team is not going to go 8 games of upfield penetrating defense and play you, and all of a sudden they're trying to sit in the gap and two gap. If they are, they're not going to be very good, because it's hard to do that kind of stuff. So you can do that. Second thing I think you can do is you have tags. I mean, Dan, you like doing the tags. I know Chip does too. We do a lot of blocking tags with our guys. So if you get kind of those movable fronts, we have different words that might lock a guy onto a guy, where I'm supposed to block down, but I have a head up 4 and he's kind of moving and confusing our kid. We can lock onto him instead of ask our kid to make a quick decision in 0.2 seconds. That's difficult to make as an offensive lineman. I think you can also manipulate your splits. I think that's another underused tool on the offensive line, is manipulating your splits. If they're trying to beat you inside, shrink your splits down. If they're trying to play, the Super Bowl just got done. I know this is coming out way after that, but if I'm seeing a super wide 9 technique, if I'm a tackle, why wouldn't I widen my splits out, or gain depth? So there's different things you can do in that world, I think, that can help you. But the main thing for me is you got to have rules. Once you know your rules, and we have what we call like non-negotiables. So if you're a lineman, your non-negotiable on a down block is, guess what? Don't let the guy outside. Like that's your non-negotiable. Now, let's give you some tools that let you problem solve. So in the middle of a game, you can solve these issues. If he beats you upfield, we need to shrink our splits and step flatter. If he's beating you over the top, we probably could widen and take a deeper angle to block him. So as long as my non-negotiable is don't let him outside, or whatever that might be, there's a lot of tools we can now give you to work with. And I think that's where a lot of coaches struggle on the offensive line is, we can draw up where they are, but we don't understand them. And I think as an offensive line coach, you really need to study your opponent so that you understand tools that can help you block them. We watch a lot of these offensive line gurus, and they're good. They're really good dudes, but they're showing pass pro and all that stuff, and you need to have that. But in my opinion, you got to realize who you're blocking. Like, who am I blocking, and what do I have to accomplish? I think if you can do that stuff, a lot of times the front takes care of itself.
I love it. That's a good point. Yep. How, Kenny, I'm going to ask a question here, because we struggled with this year, and I've talked to a lot of other coaches, and it seems to be an ongoing deal. That front side 4 or 4-eye, mainly the 4-eye, because a 4, by rule, you're leaving him alone and he becomes the kick man, unless he's, you got a tight end that's going to take him. But that 4 and 4-eye sometimes, that can be it can really mess up your gap scheme play. You end up with a couple gaps and you don't build the wall. It's not sound. What are ways that y'all have kind of, solved that problem?
Well, a lot of it, I think you have to figure out, again, we're able to kind of dictate the front because we do have a tight end, so that helps. We kind of know roughly where he's going. But for me, again, we're going to make a call on, we're going to block that guy out or we're going to block that guy down. I'm not a big fan of my tackle has to make a decision on the snap, because honestly, if we have a head up 4, we're probably not going to leave him unblocked and try to kick him, because that makes that tackle have to figure things out. Because here's what we tell our guys. Well, you're stepping down no matter what. If he crosses your face, you take him. That sounds really good on a podcast with the 3 of us. That doesn't ever look really good in a game, because
it is. It's a bear.
It's going to go slow. It's going to be awful. And so we're going to probably either decide, hey, we're going to lock on to him, or we're going to block down on him with somebody else. But But to me, a 4-eye, that's not as big an issue for me because we can fan that guy, we can block that guy down. I think the issues you're going to face if you're trying to run gap scheme are more head up movable guys. Like that's going to become issues. And that's why, in my opinion, with our gap scheme, we're flexible. Like we're not saying we're going to run 34 power to the B gap. Because what if they line up their stud in the freaking B gap? Like that's not going to work. So we number off who's got who. So if I have a 4-eye, the way our rules base should be is we're either blocking him down or we're blocking him out and we're running to the easier gap, wherever that might be. And so I think that's kind of how you have to be. But a lot of these guys that are struggling with 4-eyes is because they don't really understand horizontal movement is what you need to run ISO, and power. Now, if you're running zone, those are problems, and I'm not a zone guy. Maybe Chip can help on that part of the answer. But that to me, if you want to stop zone, those 4-eyes, those are problems.
We have some pretty good film from last year of those 4s and 4-eyes causing multiple gaps to run through, but none of them are as clean as if what you really want. We teach gap scheme as an A gap play essentially, and then widen as necessary. So if the wall builds and it becomes C gap, here we go. But when you end up with 2 gaps or multiple gaps to run through, but none of them are quite as clean and structured, it kind of throws kids off. So that's why I asked, because we're always looking for that answer too, because guys do weird things with those 4-eyes. So Chip, kind of the same question to you here, boss. How are you problem solving on Friday nights with any issue?
Another case of dastardly defensive coordinators trying to rain on my parade. For years, when I was in Lynette, Alabama, early on we played the longest running rival in East Alabama, right down the highway from us. And years ago, when they first started having football, they were all the same size, but that school kept growing. So we were always, in my years there, we were always 2A, and one contract we were 1A. Well, they were always 5A, and a couple of contracts they were 6A. And we had to play these jokers every year. And their defensive coordinator, at some point, went to an odd front as their standard front and started running those 4s. And I go back in its first game of the season, usually, or the second game, and I said, I'm not going to change the way I block for a game that only counts for pride when I got games coming up that count toward playoffs.
Right.
But I finally figured out what we did was I stole an idea from the zone guys, and I played with it during the off season. And what we would do with a 4 and a 4-eye, and a lot of times we just did it with our tackles, is I started teaching them. And by the way, if they'll contact me, I'll send them a free resource on how to deal with it, why I changed the way I teach tracks, which is because of this team right here. We pick up our foot and put it down almost like a bucket step with the inside foot. If that 4-eye slants inside, that gives us time without slowing us down and telling my guy to wait to see what he does, which is stupid. So we pick that foot up, put it down, and take off on our track. So if that 4 is slanted inside, now he's now slanted on my track, I've got him. If he slants outside, I don't have him. Or if he comes straight ahead and comes off my hip as I'm blocking down, I don't have him. The wing back or the tight end will get him if we're running buck or whatever. So that's why we started doing that. And it's just now some coaches, pardon the pun, bucket, that they buck that idea, that notion of taking that step. But it was the best way I found to deal with these cats without screwing up my entire system for one cockeyed game.
Right.
And I just started teaching that kid those tackles, and we just did it all the time. And I went back and broke down film not too long ago, and I said, look at there, they're even doing it against an even front. And it didn't change anything. Matter of fact, what it did, when you take that, it's kind of a 45-degree, pick it up, put it down inside, almost an inverted bucket step on the outside zone. And it opened up their hips right on the track. I mean, they weren't parallel to the line anymore, but they were parallel to their hips were now lined up on the track, and they're off to the races. And that was the number one thing that I found. And also against the 4-eye, pick it up, put it down, and boom, he comes right across your track. You're fitting up on him, and you're getting this butt. And Kenny, it also helped with the teams that like to read hats. you know how you and I talked about that, how you got two ways to do the down block, one head in front, one head behind. Mine's always head in front now because that foot getting picked up, putting down allows that guy that's being soft to commit. And it takes like a split second for it to happen, but the defense has to react. The ball is moved. And I found it helped with teams that do that too. The ones that try to, make your down block across their face and then they come over the top of the block. And I'll send that to anybody that wants it. All you got to do is email me. And it's a free resource about why I changed the way I teach tracks.
Those are great points, man, because as much as it's kind of, as we get into this rules-based blocking, sometimes it doesn't cover every situation, right? You tried to make it, but like I just said a minute ago, right? We're helping a youth coach and he's got 3 kids in one A gap. Like, what am I supposed to do, right? I mean, my one guard can't down block 3 kids. So yes, the rule says common sense, you can just block down, but sometimes the rules don't work. So having changes in your rules, or maybe it's just your tracks, or whatever your kids that year require of you, I feel like it's why we have systems, right? So we can keep track of these little changes, little wrinkles we have to put in.
And that's why rec league teams, youth league teams should have rules that you can't do stuff like that. And this is not me being an offensive guy. That's not football. Nobody's going to run that crap that's getting paid to do it.
Right.
And there ought to be rules that you can't do that. I get out there and I watch rec league teams play, and they got 8 guys on the line of scrimmage. Well, it's not teaching them football. They got better athletes. They're just going to make the tackle in the backfield every time. Your guys aren't learning how to play football on defense, and the offense isn't learning how to play football.
Right.
But they want to win some kind of plastic ring or something for winning the rec league. I don't know what, but they need to. That's not football.
I feel you, man. Yes, all the way. We're gonna jump into our last part here, guys, and that's just what not to do as a coach. Kenny, I'm gonna steal your part here. I think that the lesson for today is just you can simplify things down so much, but at some point a very, very simple system doesn't cover all the bases. And so you talk about watering it down or simplifying it. I just think we can't get so worried about making one rule fits all that nothing else can be, nothing else can show up without breaking our system. I believe in a world of rigid things tend to break. So if your rules are so concrete that they become rigid, someone's going to break those rules. So, we talk about all the time. I'm big into adaptability and fluidity. We named our physical therapy clinic Adaptable Physical Therapy. Like, we truly believe in finding a way, finding an answer to every problem that exists. And so if your kids consistently come up with problems that break your rules, you probably need to reassess them. You may have simplified football a little too much. So that would be today's lessons is don't simplify it so much, or try to live in this concrete world where those junk fronts can change things. And now you can't run what you do best. You lose your identity because of some crazy rule. There you go. That's a very short.
Or lose your job.
Or lose your job. Or lose your job. That's right. Well, Chip, man, we want to tell you thank you for coming on the show today. We're going to knock out some sponsors real quick. Before we do, tell us one more time about your system. What's the new thing that's for sale, and where they can go find it?
Gun Power Spread System Manual. It's everything we did for about the last 20 years or so and how it came about. A bunch of region championships, a couple of state titles. We had good players, but I think the system was good too. And of course, it was built around several of those kids to make it better. And you can contact me at Seagle.chip, and I'm sure you'll have it in the show notes, but it's SEAGLE, S-Eagle, Seagle.chip@gmail.com. Head on over to Football Talk with Coach Chip on YouTube, and all the recent videos have how you can get it on there. There's over 300 free videos on my YouTube channel, and I've got over 20 freebies if you subscribe that you just get just for asking for them. And just free resources and things, some of them are 2 pages long, some of them are 12 pages long. You got the Duo free resource that I sent you a year ago, Daniel, where it talked about Gap Down Buddy, which is the same thing as Gap Down Double that Kenny talked about.
Yeah.
And all that's available for free. I'm just trying to give back. I coached for 40 years. I had some health concerns in my 40th season, and I decided to step away from it. But I stepped away from on-field coaching, not football. My wife tells people now that, so what's Chip doing now that he's retired? She says he ain't retired. She says he's just coaching coaches now. He said he's on the phone every day. He's texting coaches all over the country and now in Europe that I talk to. I just want to help. I want to help, and I do charge for some things, but I look at it like a coaching supplement or a stipend. It's just enough to justify my time spent doing it.
That's
And
right.
it has paid for a couple of trips to the beach too.
There we go. I like it. Well, that's good, man. We appreciate you jumping on, tell us about your stuff and giving us some insight into how someone else views this rules-based blocking. Kenny, we got the last couple clinics coming up, and then the new book. What's the book? Tell me again.
Yeah, Play Caller's Guide. It's out and about, and hopefully you guys can get something from it. Those are a lot of fun to read and to write, for me. So we got that one out. And, of course, we've got Gun T 6.0 has been going really, really well. And, I'd encourage you guys just to kind of check around on the site and see what'll work for you. You got fbcoachsimpson.com. There's a ton. There's over 42 books on there now. So there's a lot to look through.
That's a lot.
I told Kenny on my podcast, Daniel, I said, you've written more books than the Apostle Paul.
There you go. Hey, when you got a thing that you're good at, right? Just tell other people about it.
He sure does.
Quick, I want to mention our sponsors, Ace Sports being the big one. If it's you're running out of time, but it's still a good time to reach out to Mark and Ryan and the guys. I have been on the phone with them all week, right? So, it is a good time to communicate with them. They're busy with some clinics and stuff. It's not too late to get something installed this year, but you're pushing it. So if you're trying to make a decision, trying to get your admin on board, looking for that next big fundraiser, reach out to the guys at Ace Sports and let them get you a quote, start building. Maybe it's next year's project, but it's a great time to get in there and see what they can do for you. Social media, you can find me at Coach Chambo OK. You can hook me up on Chamberlain Football Consulting at gmail.com. And then I have a website by the same name, chamberlainfootballconsulting.com. The Patreon's really where I'm doing business nowadays. Jump over patreon.com/Chamberlain Football Consulting. That's where you can find a tier that fits you best, whatever it is you're needing in your life. Chip, social media wise, if somebody wants to reach out on Twitter or something, where do they find you at?
I am Chip Seagle at Coach Chip on Twitter, X. And then on Facebook, it's Chip Seagle. I got a Facebook page, Football Talk with Coach Chip. I learned that from Kenny. He's all things FB Coach Simpson. I'm all things Football Talk with Coach Chip. And I'm on Facebook there. That got a page. And, of course, seagle.chip@gmail.com is kind of my website, really. And that's where people reach me when they want a resource or want to just talk football. And if there's something I can't answer well in the email, my phone number is at the bottom of every email. And, I tell people, I've said it a million times. I'm like the fat kid from Remember the Titans. Somebody said football, and I came a-running.
There we go.
I'll be there.
And Kenny, where can we find you at, boss?
Like Chip said, all things FB Coach Simpson. So go over to the website. You can read headsets. Daniel and Chip have done a good job writing. Chip's been doing it for a bit, and Daniel started on the last 2 years. And so lots of different articles, all free. FBCoachSimpson.com. Of course, there's stuff that I got a daughter who's in a private college, so I got to make a little more money than Chip does. So that's why we have more books. So those are over there at FBCoachSimpson.com also.
Yeah, awesome. All mine are grown.
Right.
There we go. Podcast is at Coaching 101 Pod. We want to thank you for being a listener to the Coaching 101 podcast. Like I said earlier in the show, guys, we broke that 6,800 downloads a month mark, and we want to see that streak keep climbing. The more numbers we get, essentially, it just helps us reach more coaches. And that's what we're trying to do is give back to the coaches. We'll hope you join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing to the show so you always know when the new episodes are out. Time to start leaving reviews. Those 5-star reviews help us spread the message a long way. So if you aren't yet, please go in and give us a review, especially on Apple or Spotify. Those are great places to leave the reviews. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up, no matter the situation. Find a way.